Alright, we're back. Sorry about that. Need to upgrade my internet, bro. Far out.
Magnet that's pulling these characters towards it. If it was a magnet that's pulling characters towards it, then the Sith would have already come to this planet so freaking long ago. And Plagueis, Tenebris, Venomous, they all would have been intrigued by this, and any other sort of dark side user. So it wouldn't have been left alone for that long. Yoda would have also investigated this planet. He wouldn't have sent these like random Jedi to this place. It would have been something that would have been highly discussed with the Jedi High Council, and they would have all gone there and investigated. A lot of different narrative reasons to put it there, as opposed to after the fact of, oh, also let's explore this cool aspect of the Star Wars vocabulary. Aversions can hide Force-sensitive people. Is that the reason that the Coven chose that planet? I ask because I want to know what came first. They found the planet, they moved there, and then decided to create the girls. Or they moved to Brendok specifically to create the girls. It's a really good question. It's also a backwards question because we haven't confirmed that the witches created them. Wow, the level of backtracking is insane. She just said that they haven't confirmed that the witches created them. It literally says in the show, in episode 7, that they were created.
Oh,
like, one of the things Soul says is like, how were the... Bro, does she not even like know her own show? Literally, Soul says, how were the girls created? And the witch gets all pissed and essentially looks into the future and says Anakin is going to come and destroy everybody. She literally gets a glimpse of Order 66, something Yoda nobody else could ever do.
The time has come.
Ooh, I think I need to watch Revenge of the Sith again.
Execute order.
But I guess it's, you know, the power of the planet that's giving these otherwise weak, normal humans abilities that even Jedi Master, Grandmaster Yoda doesn't have. You haven't confirmed that the witches created them. Bro, you literally confirmed in like several episodes that this was confirmed, that it's literally alluded to. It's as much of an illusion, it's as much as a confirmation that they created the girls by using the thread and the Force as it is when she turned into that freaking sharp-toothed demon creature with black eyes, disintegrating herself and disintegrating May. And then Soul was like, "Oh, you look evil. I'm gonna kill you to save the child." I was gonna let him go. This? What? Who writes this? No, she got flack for it, and she's understanding. Well, maybe this actually does destroy Star Wars, because when she went to write it, she didn't understand any of the lore or Star Wars in general, and is now backtracking and say, "Well, you know what? We didn't actually say that the witches created." You know what, K-Man? Can you add some clips that confirm that they did indeed insinuate that the girls were created from the thread, the Force?
It's the twins' blood test results. The M count is very high. Extremely high. Very Force sensitive. Even identical twins would have different symbionts.
It's because of however they were made.
Yeah, so they're clones.
Twins were artificially created.
Yeah.
Reporter's response, fair enough. But yes. Obviously, yes. It's intimated very strongly that's what happened. I believe... Why, bro, you wrote this. Why did you just say and have me go on a 5-minute tangent that's a backwards question because you haven't confirmed it, and then saying, yes, obviously, it's intimated very strongly that that's what happened? Bro, what the I believe that the former is true for the Coven, and the latter is true for Anastasia. I think Anastasia, not unlike Venestra, they're these very compelling leaders that have very intense senses of foresight. And Anastasia was always thought of as this religious figure that gained followers more and more as she moved out into the world. So for her, I think she always sort of knew that she needed to settle somewhere in order to bring fruition. Not a grand scheme. But so before they went to this planet, they had essentially like next to no powers, right? So because they went to this planet now, they have all of these powers, and the power of one, the power of many. Not really. It's just like the power of this planet that gives you actual powers. Otherwise, you go off of it and you're like literally just a normal human being. So for her, I think she always sort of knew that she needed to settle somewhere in order to bring fruition, not a grand scheme. But what was the next step of her journey would have been the height of her powers. And I think she also knew that at some point in utilizing the extent of her powers, that her destruction would come pretty soon after that. Well, using the height of her powers made her look like some demon creature that was trying to disintegrate a child that Soul was trying to protect. So, I mean, yeah, if you're gonna do that, maybe, you know, try to not look so scary when you're trying to save a child. I mean, if you're, I don't know. Vernestra's having a similar experience of something will tip the scale. She's Leslie's wife. She's understanding they have this destiny. They believe that, let's just make my wife the most powerful character in the show because, you know, nepotism, why not? She's understanding they have this destiny. They believe that they have the destination spiritually. Vernestra is putting the pieces together for herself that this is it. This is what's coming. Not unlike Anastasia, what's coming is going to be the fulfillment of that particular destiny. Virginses have played an important part in Star Wars. Oh, here we get to it. Here we get to it. Since the original trilogy, even if not everyone is familiar with the term, but there are different types. What can you tell us specifically about the nature of the virgins on Brenda? This was very important to me, Dave Filoni, and to Pablo Hidalgo. That's the girls are not a virgins. The girls themselves are not a virgins in the Force. They needed, again, however they got here. The act of creating them was going to need amplification. Therefore, okay, so she literally just debunks what we were talking about a couple minutes ago, where the act of creating them was going to need amplification. Pause. I asked because I want to know what came first. They found the planet, they moved there, and then decided to create the girls? Or they moved to Brendok specifically to create the girls? That's a really good question, says Leslye. It's also a backwards question because we haven't confirmed that the witches created them. And then a few lines later she says, this was very important to me. The girls are not a virgins. The girls themselves are not a virgins in the Force. They needed, again, however they got here, the act of creating them was going to need amplification. Therefore, we came around to the decision that the virgins was on Brendok. Because you couldn't create a virgins in the Force for the child, you had to create it for the planet to create the child. I guess that's okay then.
I've encountered a virgins in the Force.
A fire on a brick wall? The whole mountain is on fire.
And that it would remain mysterious. So that way, if we went back there in the future tellings of the story, we could uncover a little bit more about what is actually there. It was important that this type of virgins was a natural one as opposed to within a human being or an alien. It's literally stated in the show that they manipulate threads, that they pull on the threads of the... Like, he literally explains in episode 3 and then a little more in episode 7 that she pulls on threads to manipulate things and therefore created these two children. Soul even asks, how were the children created? As they know that they were manipulated and created through the Force. If you don't want something to be so, don't write it that way. It's so simple.
Oh my god,
okay,
that's what
this
I
is
mean.
not even my question. It is Souls. Twins, where did they come from? How were they created?
magnet,
She
or drawn
laughs.
there like a
Well,
magnet. No, you
tune in
used your
next
pen
week.
and
Also
paper and
subscribe to
decided
Disney
that's
Plus. Tune in next
what
week.
happened.
Tune in next week. We definitely aren't going to leave you hanging. You do a show like this. You take a lot of risks. You don't really save a lot of those types of questions for season 2. There are a lot of things you do to save for a season 2, but that kind of question is not one of them. Okay. Wait till next week, everyone, on Dragon Ball Z. You know if you're definitely getting a season 2? No. I had to ask. I have no idea. Well, not that I have no idea. Right there. Says it all. I would say there are conversations.
Fuck off.
Definitely doing season 2. And I don't know when that'll happen. So it's gone from no to, yeah, we just don't know when we're going to release season 2. I don't know when that decision will be made. 100% we're getting season. Plagueis and Palpatine. Anasaia's ability to be in Torben's mind while physically existing in the real world was very reminiscent of Mother Talzin's powers, as was Anasaia's ability to change her corporeal form into shadows. You've talked about your love and appreciation of the Night Sisters before. Were those powers directly inspired by Talzin? Absolutely. Talzin is a figure that looms really large in Star Wars for me. On the Clone Wars, obviously I responded to them immediately because it was more Star Wars content. It was George Lucas Star Wars content. But I was blown away by the Night Sister arc. Asaja's storyline, I was just like, hold on, this can happen? This is in Star Wars? You mean someone who was in the light turning to the dark side? Oh, but I guess it's different because she's a female.
I think that Star Wars is so gay already.
She never heard of Darth Vader? Count Dooku? Jesus. I love the character design. A bald female. Vernestra. There we go. I see. I love the differentiation between their powers and the Jedi's powers. It was all just really great. You mean the differentiation between the dark side and the light side? So hold on. Asajj stuck out to her because she was a female. Let's be real about this. Because there's nothing special about Asajj. I love Asajj. I think she's dope. I think we need more badass female character in Star Wars who don't suck like Rey and Reva. And that's just because they're written poorly. But you write them well, like Asajj Ventress or Ahsoka Tano in the Clone Wars, you get really well-made characters. Mara Jade, heir to the Empire. I mean, the list goes on. Bastila Shan, blah, blah, blah. So in making the show, I knew one of the first things I wanted to take a look at was creating my own version of witches, because why not? Let's put your stamp on it too. Because I think that the Night Sisters are a bit more mercenary. The Acolytes witches, I think, basically want to stay out of everyone's way and aren't grasping for any sort of power. Hold on.
You're
They're
on a
not
planet
grasping for any sort of power.
that has power.
Yet they purposely go to this planet that amplifies their otherwise weak ass into some sort of like super powerful thread force pulling beings.
Bro,
but they're
is
not looking for power.
hard to
Okay,
sit
thank
through.
you. They're not getting involved in any kind of political skirmish or any war movement. Well, yeah, because it's a time of peace, Leslye. This is supposed to be a time of peace for the Jedi. The only people around are Plagueis, Tenebris, Venomous, 7 other dark side users that Plagueis was potentially going to take under his wing, and he landed on Palpatine. But they were all in the shadows. None of them were making themselves known. Of course, there's no war. It's supposed to be a time of peace. The only war is the one that you interjected into this timeline, which was supposed to be time of peace. That would be the last thing they would want to do. So very different, but still echoing and calling back to the influences that those characters had on me. In terms of their specific powers, how are the Acolytes witches different from the Night Sisters? The Night Sisters utilize magic exclusively. With my witches, it's my witches and not the Acolytes. So with my witches,
Bro,
it's a
this
bit
is
of a
just like-
hybrid. They're definitely dabbling in the
surprised.
Force and calling the Force by a different name. They're trying to cultivate their sensitivity to it without having to be trained by the Jedi. Is that even possible? Well, I guess so if you go to a planet that amplifies your powers 100-fold or whatever, where if you're taken off this planet, you're literally nobody, nothing. But I also think that in the Ascension ceremony, you see how they're utilizing not just wherever the Virgins may be physically on the planet, but the eclipse. These powerful movements of heavenly bodies and whatever's under the earth, that type of thing. What is meant to be expressed there is that they are drawing their power from nature, magic, and the Force. So we never sort of go, they're using magic the way that the Night Sisters are. They're using the Force even though they're not Jedi. Right. So they're using the thread. They're manipulating the thread on this planet that amplifies their weakness. Put me on that planet, I'll start flying and moving rocks, essentially. To me, it felt more interesting to show a group of people, a group of witches, having abilities that the Jedi could not pinpoint. That the Jedi weren't going, oh, well, that's magic. Oh, well, that's the Force. That's one of the reasons they get so thrown off by what they're seeing. It's so unpredictable, and it's difficult for them to categorize and then report back to the Council. But then if they're on this planet, why aren't the Jedi able to amplify their powers as well?
Bro,
it's just like one rule
she has
applies
no idea
to
what
the
the
witches,
fuck
but it doesn't
she
apply to the
created.
Jedi who also use the Force. None of this makes any sense. None of this. The Jedi are trying to get as much information as they can, but each time they interact with the witches, they're getting different impressions of what the Coven is doing. I think they interacted with them like once, and the second time they interacted with them, they literally had her turn into like some demon ghost, and then they stabbed a fart, and that was it. Going into this episode, the show definitely suggested that the Jedi might have done something truly terrible on Brenda. But I think this episode showed that all of their actions were either genuinely noble, totally defensible, or at least understandable mistakes. What was the thematic purpose of raising the possibility of hidden Jedi crimes if you were then going to reveal that they were flawed rather than evil? I'm so glad it read that way for you. It's a show about the bad guys in every sense of that word. Jedi are the bad guys. They're the oppressors. And because my previous work before coming into Star Wars was almost always concerned with some sort of morality, immorality,
What the hell
or
has she even done in
amorality,
the
it was
past?
always about characters running through a spectrum of those things as opposed to having a good character and a bad character, a good girl and a bad girl, a nice guy and a womanizer. What the talking about Han Solo?
Look, your worshipfulness, let's get one thing straight. I take orders from just one person.
So
me.
what? She
Why
makes
does
characters
just say
that
you hate
swap
men,
and
dude?
change
Just
their
say
mind
it. That
50
these
times.
characters could be all of these things at once was important to me. I'm glad that you got that impression from watching the episode. That Jedi are not performing evil acts. Yeah, okay, well that's not really how you wrote it for us to view. It kind of seems like you're essentially trying to empathize with the witches, that you made them the main character, these Jedi have come to this planet trespassing, literally, and have been told to leave, are there after children, and won't stop until they get the children because they're interjecting their beliefs onto this coven that has gone to this planet to amplify their powers, but they don't care about power, and they've then created 2 children from the Force. Bro, in episode 3, Anastasia literally says, I created them. And then the other chick, Coral, says, I carried them. What are you talking about? I don't know. They're not being willfully oppressive. They're not manipulating or tricking anyone. So if the show, with all of the other characters, is exploring the spectrum of morality, the stranger being a great example, May being a great example, it felt to me that the Jedi also had to have that particular treatment. The Jedi could not be part of that thematic element of the show. Why does Sol feel a connection to Osha so immediately?
Yes,
and specifically, why does he feel like she's meant to be as a Padawan? I wanted to keep some mystery around that. I wanted to definitely call back to Qui-Gon, call forward to Qui-Gon and Anakin. Qui-Gon almost immediately zeroes in on the potential that Anakin has, the specialness of Anakin, the exceptionalism of Anakin. No, he does not. It takes him a long time to kind of come to the point where he realizes Anakin is actually special. It's not like, I am Anakin. Oh my god, the chosen one. Holy
you're not
shit.
just some
Which is
creepy dude in the
what
forest.
Sol was doing, hiding behind frickin' trees, and his pupils were dilated as he saw these children. He's like, oh my god, they're going to be the best Jedi ever. They're going to be my apprentice. He's like essentially going through baby fever, what like a woman would go through baby fever. He's essentially going through that with a Padawan fever. He wants a Padawan of his own and doesn't have one. And for some reason, he's hell-bent on training one of the twins or both of them. And then when he finds out that they were artificially made through the Force, he's even more hell-bent on it. But Qui-Gon Jinn, he took so much time to kind of feel Anakin out, see him out, see like, okay, well, like, how does he do with the pod race? He's got gifts. He tells Shmi. He sees things before they happen. It's a Jedi trait. He's starting to understand and believe. He does tests. He literally tests Anakin's blood. And then he's sitting there thinking. And Obi-Wan's like, it's off the charts, Master. I don't know. It's 20,000. And he's like, what does this mean? And Qui-Gon's just looking there and he's like, I don't know. Nowhere in that moment is he like, he's the chosen one. I need to take him to the council and train him immediately. It's like, no, dude. He's literally like still with midi-chlorians higher than Grandmaster Yoda. He's sitting there perplexed. Like, I don't know what this means. And he's pondering on it and thinking. And still, it takes him to the council to be trained, to be requested to be trained. Please tell me you have hire better writers that know Star Wars. Hire people that understand the first 6 films like the back of their hand, because you won't get mistakes like this. Qui-Gon and Anakin are nothing like Sol and Osha and May, not even comparable, but yet you're trying to copy and paste and we see what you're doing. Sol is like this extremely emotional, unbalanced, un-Jedi-like being who can't contain any level of emotion from spilling out, whereas Qui-Gon is always composed and always keeps his shit together like a man. There's just something that he feels like within his connection with the Force, her strength in the Force, and how he recognizes that. Well, how does he recognize that if the power is amplifying their abilities? And so if that's the case, then when they go off planet, aren't they supposed to be much, much weaker? None of this makes any sense. Clearly wasn't thought out when she was writing it. And I always wondered, having seen The Phantom Menace and seen Qui-Gon behave the way they did, I did wonder, is this how it happened? Or do you just get matched up with somebody? And a much more compelling, interesting storyline is, as a Jedi Knight moving into Master, to identify your apprentice in a deep spiritual connection, whether it's out in the world or at the temple, as opposed to being paired up with someone. Well, yeah, it would be the same way with your dog. We all have special connections with our dogs because we're putting the time and energy into those memories and having connections with that being, with that soul. It's the same with your child or your apprentice or whatever. That's not really a totally unique thing in the sense that, like, it can only happen with that one person. Whoever you put your focus, your energy, and time with, you will build some kind of a connection. It may not be the best. I mean, for example, look at Yoda and Dooku. Look at Obi-Wan and Anakin. But then, you know, you get a great master and apprentice relationship. You look at Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, right, for example. Or, you know, even Yoda and Master Windu, for example. I would even say Anakin and Ahsoka had a pretty good connection. I'm glad you brought up Qui-Gon because I want to ask about Anakin. I think the connections between the twins and Anakin were obvious, even before this episode. But I want to focus on their differences. Specifically, this idea that their one consciousness split into 2 bodies. Why would that make them stronger, aka the power of 2, and not weaker if they're 2 halves of one whole? I think it's both. The girls are guinea pigs. They're patient 0 for this sort of power.
She doesn't know
it didn't
what
work
the
perfectly.
hell she has.
Therefore, the girls on their own can never be as powerful as Anakin. Their full potential together has yet to be explored. They've been separated
so
too long. Okay, so they're dyad. Cool, more dyad shit.
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
dyad.
It's like in Dragon Ball Z when you get Goku and Vegeta fusing, they become like this ultimate powerful being. But now she's saying that like they're stronger when they're apart, when they're split. It's like when you're doing an experiment and it's the first round of it. There are maybe not an experiment of creating Force-sensitive children from the Force, which is something that Palpatine and Plagueis could never do. All right, got you. Cool. They are maybe not
they
the
weren't on the
first,
planet,
but one
bro.
of the first experiments of this particular use of power. So the twins are weaker than Anakin for sure. They're going... Well, she has to say that now. I feel like the reporter went through like a list of all the YouTubers' comments and discourse about the show, and he's just trying to hit on all those. And so Leslie's like trying to do damage control on all of those plot-breaking points that she created because there are so many questions now. So the Nerdist reached out and they're like, hey, let's address all of the things that, you know, these YouTubers are talking about, these people online are talking about, and, you know, you can, like, fix everything. Yeah, that'd be a great idea. No, not how this works. They're going to fall short of what will eventually become the chosen one. They will never achieve what that is because, in my mind, Anastasia could only do so much. Okay, so she did create them. She keeps literally confirming she created them. And in the show, but then in the interview, she says she doesn't. Like, are you trying to be smart? The twins split, Anasaia's power split, and therefore a lot of her philosophy is about the power of two, about the fact that they must stay together. They must stay together. The twins are stronger together if she keeps them together, and obviously there's an analogy to this of the isolationist feeling. Not just the coven, but also of family. If I can keep you safe, then you won't get hurt. You won't get hurt. Why does she keep repeating it twice? Power of two thing going on? This is why the Jedi blowing up this dynamic, both in episode 3 and 7, is so important to see, because Anastasia starts to essentially go into this crisis as a parent. Of course, I know they need to stay together, but they also need to be their own person. So perhaps I need to let go of my own design and trust that this is what's meant to be. Because what's the other option? That I force my children to be people they're not. Okay, so this is therapy. So there's therapy time. Whole show. Therapy set. Very nice. Why are the twins the Coven's future, and why would letting Osha go with the Jedi sacrifice? Listen, Leslye, we all have like childhood trauma. We all have things that we need to go to therapy for. We're not going to interject that into a $180 million Star Wars project. Please leave that shit out of it. I don't bring my issues to the table. Nobody brings their issues to the table in that sense when they're coming to do a professional job of telling a story. It's so clear that this is a very, very personal thing for you, and you're literally using this company's money to try and create something that will make you sleep better at night. What the hell, man? We all got issues. We all got problems. We're humans. We live on this planet, we go through shit, and then we croak. That's how it goes. But don't interject this into that. What the hell, dude? Why are the twins the Coven's future, and why would letting Osha go with the Jedi sacrifice their future? Why does a powerful coven of witches need new leaders anyway? Not unlike what I was just saying, that Anastasia and the Coven do believe, to be the extent that the witches understand them, that the power of two will breed the power of many, meaning that these young girls will start a legacy that could actually grow and grow and grow. That is unlike the Sith, who are going to operate with only two always. One to have the power and one to crave it. That dynamic and that balance is how the Sith stay around. Right, but before Revan, before Bane, that wasn't really the case. There's just a shitload of them, like the Brotherhood of Darkness. Part of what the Coven wants, even if it's not what Anastasia wants, is this legacy. This feeling of the two girls ascending into becoming the leaders of the Coven, of being little Dalai Lamas they can worship, that they would proliferate, being able to create more children or being able to create more. The witches are powerful, very powerful, but they're only powerful together. As you can see with what happened with Kelnaka, they could not be able to, one by one, do what they did with him. Right, then they all died. Why did they all die when Endara... Dude, this is literally damage control, this whole article. Why did they all die when Endara freed Kelnaka? This was a big question when we were working on the episode. To me, it was very important because it told two stories. One, that Endara, despite her... She's going to say, what, they're all connected or something. One, that Endara, despite her being completely and utterly the consummate Jedi in this episode, I did feel it was important that she also misjudged something. If we were going to explore those themes, she couldn't just be this infallible Jedi. She also had to have something else going on with her. And I think what she did is, in the moment, in trying to sever the connection between Kelnaka and the witches, she dealt with a power that she did not understand and was familiar with. Did she kill them? Yeah. She didn't know what was going to happen to them. Okay. That's quite the power. Wow. I mean, if only Anakin had such a power, he could have literally just short-circuited all of the droids in the Clone Wars. Or Yoda. I mean, hey, why not? The most powerful Jedi in existence. almost 900 years old. He could have just, boom, just like that with a little head tip. But I guess it's the power of the planet that does that to you. Maybe they could like take a piece of soil from the planet and like put it in their robes, and wherever they go, they're like amplified, you know, maybe something like that. Or, you know, maybe Palpatine could have taken the Death Star and destroyed the planet and like had all of that power emanate into the galaxy so that everyone can benefit from having extra powers of this vergence on a planet. Cool. Was it intentional? No, she did not know. All she was thinking was, I have to save him. Again, it starts to become a selfish want. I must save this colleague of mine. I have to do this. If I don't do this, then something terrible could happen to him. Bro, I wouldn't be so worried about what happens to Kelnaka. I would be worried about what happens to all you Jedi. He's gonna kill all of you guys. What do you mean? It's either them or us. So what is this? What's the option here? And they're causing this. We've seen what they're capable of. I've seen them do this to my Padawan. They're now doing it to an incredibly powerful Jedi Master. What do I do? Okay, I'm going to make this decision. Okay, so she did mean to kill them. I now see why May was written the way she was, where she can't make up her mind. 1 minute she does one thing, 1 minute she does another thing. It's literally because Leslye Headland can't make up her own mind, even in this interview, where she'll say one thing and then she'll completely contradict and then say the other thing. What is going on here? But she doesn't know what the consequences of that decision will be. The same way that Soul doesn't know what his actions will mean for Osha's future. Corbin doesn't really put together, because he's so young, that the consequences of his actions are going to lead to all of this falling apart. The consequences of what actions, bro? He didn't even do anything. He literally had his mind infiltrated by this witch who like got all sexual and weird with him and then told him to get on his knees. What is he guilty of? Indara had to also make that mistake in order to continue exploring that idea. What mistake? Let them all be killed by Kelnaka and then Kelnaka be killed as well? What are you talking about? Coral says she would die before she...
The 15th is a big day for us. It's 20K day, when all our Division 1 winners get their next 20K.
let the Jedi take her children. Then the Jedi like Osha. So is it okay to assume she's dead? Because the episode definitely suggests she survived. Yeah, no body, no death. That's all I have to say about that one. All right, yeah. Considering this angry, powerful, force-sensitive witch might be out there, and we also have this unexplained, powerful dark side user out there as well, is it possible that Coral and Kimir know each other? Oh, I can answer that. They do not know each other. But what I will say as a tease, if we are able to explore this story more, her species will tell you a little bit about where she ends up. Okay, cool. So, Dathomir. Interjecting into Dathomir, and probably put into Ahsoka Season 2. So we know Anastasia is right when she says, someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy. But how exactly does she know that? Is it just a prediction from a very smart person? Bro, it's like they literally watched my breakdown and they just are asking her questions from that. I mean, at least give me credit, bro. Come on. Is it just a prediction from a very smart person, or is that comment related to the twins' destiny? I think she's seeing the way the Jedi are reacting to her children, and she may not know this exactly, but she knows they will make the same mistake with Anakin. So, George Lucas said that Darth Vader is still the chosen one, even when he's Darth Vader. That Anakin was always the chosen one, and that the Jedi training him wasn't a mistake because he was still the chosen one when he was in the dark side, and that's how he brings balance. People have character arcs, they go through things, they do things that they do not agree with later on in life, their values change, and that's what happened with Anakin into Darth Vader and then back into Anakin. That to me is like she's going against what George created 100%, and that's not cool. When May asks for help, Anastasia not only starts dematerializing her own body, she makes May turn into a shadow as well. Bro, they literally watched my breakdown or just taking questions from this shit. What can you tell us about what exactly is happening there and why? Anastasia's main concern is that violence will be used in this confrontation. And I talked about that meaning two things. One, that Anastasia must have come from some place that utilized violence. It's something she would have seen when she was a child, something that she would have endured in her coming of age. Okay, cool. So another therapy session. So the main concern is obviously the safety of her children. So was this working with Weinstein? Is that where that's coming from? The physical safety of them. The secondary concern is, I do not want my children or my legacy to be affected by something violent. I want to remove them from whatever that is. The why about dematerializing is the first thing that Jodie and I talked about in seeing the character. What she is doing is what Jecki says in episode 4, that it's an honor to see anyone transform into the Force. I believe that yes, transforming herself and May into the Force in a way that doesn't kill them. I didn't know the Force transformed you into a literal demon with sharp teeth so that you could rip apart meat and flesh and turn your eyes black. That is so whack. That is like, please tell me you don't understand the lore without telling me you don't understand the lore. It's wild, dude. How can anybody defend that? Hey, she was literally becoming a forced ghost, which is like the embodiment of the light side, the embodiment of the force itself. And so when doing that, she takes the form of a demon with sharp teeth. Well, you know what? You directed it that way. You could have had her turn into like a happy-go-lucky, like golden, white, shining light, like just angel with wings, and Soul would have been like, what the heck's going on here? And like, but you had a deteriorating black smoke, demon-looking, sharp teeth, long, thin face, like something out of a horror movie with black eyes. Why direct it like this and then try to defend the witches? Soul confuses May for Osha during the standoff right before he kills Anisea. What does that mix-up reveal about Soul, both in that moment and for his presumed connection with Osha? That he doesn't know her well as he thinks he does. Chimere has a similar reaction to Osha that Soul has. Soul has the Qui-Gon Anakin connection with her. This is a powerful, force-sensitive child. This child is meant to be my Padawan. I'm drawn to this particular... But George already did that in episode 1, and that was supposed to be the first time that happened. So why are you now trying to put in place, before George did any of that, now say that, oh no, I was the original. This is the first time it actually happened. Was my story, my witches. That's just so weird. I'm drawn to this particular power, which means I need to help this young woman reach her full potential as a Jedi. Okay. Chimere has the exact same experience with her in episode 2. The second Osha walks into the apothecary, he knows that it's not May. He can feel that this is something different. He can feel that he wants to teach her. Chimere wants to be a part of her journey in reaching her full potential. What I think is interesting is that Chimere and later the Stranger never mistakes Osha for May, and Soul mistakes Osha for May at least twice. That's also meant to foreshadow who Osha's real master will be.
Yeah, but that's
nice. So
poor writing.
Osha's
She
so
has
right
a
there. So she
tattoo brand on her face.
And then Osha
Soul couldn't
becomes
tell the
the
difference
apprentice
between
to
the two of
Chimere.
them.
That makes a lot of sense, dude. Let me just train for 17 years and then switch my mind up and now get the different perspective and be with Soul. And then let me want to kill this person who's killed my friend, and then now I'm going to join him after he kidnapped me to a private island and I saw his Winky. Okay. Indara thinks Soul is letting his emotion and feelings get in the way, but he insists that's not what is happening. Who's right? I think she's right as a Jedi. She's right in terms of the institution they're part of. He's right because if you're not going with your instinct and your emotions when you are looking for a Padawan, or feel children are in danger, or sense the misuse of power, what else would you be relying on? When the Council says no in The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon's like, F it, I'll do it myself. He respectfully says no. What I wanted to explore here was, we asked the Council, they said no, and everyone's kind of going. We can't stand up, we can't say those things. What's great about Qui-Gon is that he is able to maintain his emotional sobriety while also advocating for his new relationship with his Padawan. Soul was unable to do that, but I don't think that's a flaw as a human. I think as a human or a father, Soul is right, but I think as a Jedi, Indara is right. Those are the two sides of Soul that are in conflict here. Soul has no business being a Jedi.
So
you can't compare Soul with Qui-Gon. He's literally
an
emotional ball of mess. With May talking about walking through fear and everyone being sacrificed to fulfill their destiny, was Soul correct that the girls were in danger? No, May misremembered what her mother said. Soul misinterpreted it, but it's because the child did. He was believing what the child said and genuinely thought, well, she says sacrifice, so this is bad. But she's misremembering what her mother said, which is that you have to sacrifice a part of yourself. Oh yeah, you just sacrifice, like an arm. No big deal. Just a piece. Just a piece is all we want. That's okay. That's all right. What were the natural desires Torben was suppressing? Was he really homesick, or was he missing someone or something instead? No, he wanted to go home. I like the idea. It just seems so human to me. I just want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. Oh, yeah, cool. Should do great in the army, for sure. Unreal. He's, been a Jedi for, 16 years?
Yeah.
How old's Torben? 16, 17? And he just decides, you know what? I had enough of this. I just want to go home. Tired of this mission. Very good writing. He's very right that she can't just tell him that. I can see a viewer saying, well, just tell him that. But she explicitly says, I have to teach him. He has to learn this. If I just tell it to him, it's not going to sink in at all. It will be my idea. It will be my thing that I'm telling him. So he has to be taught the challenging circumstances of being a Jedi. Episode 7 gives us totally different perspectives of what happened on Brendok compared to what we saw in Episode 3 when May tells Osha, "I'll kill you." Did that actually happen, or is that Osha misremembering that night? We talked about this a lot in the writer's room. There was a healthy discussion about it. Do you utilize this kind of language as a child? And I said, I think so, yeah. I remember when I was little, I have 2 sisters. I have a younger brother. We said insane things to each other. Just absolutely wild, crazy things. I don't think it got to that level of violence, of course. I hope not. But I don't think May means that at all. She doesn't mean she's actually going to kill her sister. She doesn't mean she's actually going to kill her sister, yet she locks her in and then sets fire to the whole place. And we also see her set up earlier as like tormenting the butterfly. But we did talk about the fact that possibly Osha is misremembering it because she felt so threatened in that moment. So I'd leave it up to the viewer. We did discuss both of them. Will we learn whether Kimir is truly a Sith or not in the season finale? What I will say is you don't hear it from his mouth, but there are a couple small things that happen that intimate the answer to the question. Well, I mean, he literally said to you, I'm a Sith. Yeah. Will we learn if Chimere has any connection to the Knights of Ren? There's a theory I've been working on all season. Theory you've been working on? I'm pretty sure like everybody and their mama has been saying that after they heard Kylo Ren's theme. It's a really good theory. What an interesting theory. What an amazing, that's wow, wow, wow. Yeah, well, I mean, you put the music there. What aspect of the series that will prove important in the finale do you think people haven't focused on enough up to this point? Ah, yes, it is our fault as the viewer to not focus on something enough because we're too distracted with lore breaking and the other bullshit that was put in this convoluted written show. That's a good question. I haven't been following the coverage of the show enough to really Yes, I'm sure you have. I did hear that there was a bit of a dust-up in terms of the girls stepping on Anakin's creation storyline. Oh, just a bit, which I had mixed feelings about. It's probably for another deep dive to kind of talk about that. I would say that you might be missing the forest for the trees in starting an argument about that. Instead of seeing that this is a power that could have existed in the world way before Anakin, and that power was being pursued by someone. So it's not an issue of paying attention to, but I did hear about that. And I just think people aren't taking into account the era that we're in. Ah, so things could happen before they were supposed to actually happen. You mean like the 1,000 years of peace that was pre-established that you destroyed? You mean like Ki-Adi-Mundi that wasn't supposed to be born yet or even in the show or to know that Jedi were dying in this 1,000 years of peace that you interjected and destroyed? You mean like the Vergence in the Force that was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing that was written in the prophecy and hadn't shown up for thousands of years for the Jedi that you interjected 87 years before The Phantom Menace when that was supposed to be the first iteration of that ever happening? Please do your Star Wars research before getting $180 million to write something and then saying we're not focusing on the right things. I think it is you that's not focusing on the right things, Leslye. But you got your money. Oh, there's more. If there's anything we know about the fifth in Sith, in sequels or prequels, one of the things we do know about them is their quest for these abilities, like we're seeing Anastasia being able to execute with the twins. It just seemed to me, yeah,
not gonna find
the ability
that planet?
to create life, which is something that Plagueis and Palpatine bribed so hard on, the most powerful Sith in existence ever, and they still were not fully successful at all. But these witches, let's just write, someone could do it 87 years before. Let's just put that in there. Why not? Because these are your witches, Leslye. Sounds good to me. It just seemed to me any power like that does not belong to one faction. It doesn't belong to anyone because no one was able to actually successfully do it. But now it belongs to one faction, which is the witches that you created. Does anybody see this? Please comment below if you actually are seeing this and like understanding, comprehending what she's just... Bro, it is not something that Anastasia was born with either. It's a power that belongs to the Force, and that it's up to the practitioner to be able to understand and figure out and pull apart how do you harness that particular power, which Anastasia did, which your character that you wrote and interjected did when nobody else could have. When George Lucas's characters couldn't do it, yours did. I understand what people were complaining about. We're complaining about. I thought it was a bit of a dust up, but now we're complaining. So clearly you are keeping tabs. You probably got alt accounts, or were maybe confused by, but I think they're sort of paying attention to the wrong aspect. Okay, they're not seeing the long game of the lineage of the Sith pursuing any sort of evidence of this type of power in the galaxy, and then tunnel visioning forward toward it and improving upon it. Again, if the girls are a test run, being able to improve on what that power is and being able to perfect it, that would be something, if I were a Sith, I would be interested in. Yes, the problem is that there was no test run, Leslye. There was never a iteration that was created where a Sith or any Force user of any kind was able to manipulate the Force and the midichlorians to create life. Plagueis never did it. That's just a tale that Palpatine told
Not
Anakin
canon, bro.
to coerce him
legends.
into the
It was
dark side,
legends.
to seduce him into the dark side, as you like to sexually say. Now you've created one faction that is able to do this. Whether it's a guinea pig, a test, or whatnot, they have been able to do what no other has been able to do. Palpatine should have been talking about the witches to Anakin because they successfully did the first iteration of this. They created a Force-sensitive child, 2 of them, and Plagueis was never able to. He tried, but he was never able to. So, you know what? We should redo that whole opera scene in Revenge of the Sith where Palpatine sits there and says, "Did you ever hear of the tragedy of the fucking witches of the Covenant of this random-ass planet 87 years ago?" No. I thought not. Not a story George would tell you. How do you not understand, like, the level of back and forth that you're doing here and contradicting yourself so much? This one's for me. I've been waiting many years for Darth Plagueis to show up. Do you know how the whole story of the galaxy far, far away from the Acolyte to him training Palpatine connects? Yes, I do. Well, she does know it. If I can, just like she knows Star Wars and everything else, she's interjecting. If I do get to continue the story, I know, which they will. They will make a season 2. It'll probably come out in 2027. I know how I would like that to play out, and I would say I think it's pretty complicated and messy. Cool. Mikey Walsh is a staff writer and nerdist who always thinks Darth Plagueis is showing up any second. You can follow him on Twitter and Blue Sky, and also anywhere someone is ranking the Targaryen kings. All right, well, great. Well, I feel like I said enough in this interview. That was just a lot of contradiction. We're going to make a lot of reels and a lot of clips out of it and have some fun with it. Let me know what you guys think, man. There's a lot to be said at any point in this long video. But I sat through this, I gave my take, and by all means, give yours too. Just be respectful, be kind to everybody, but give your points and give them good. Have a great rest of your day. TheorySabers.com. We'll catch you all later.
My points, she contradicted herself 50 times in that bloody article, mate. Oh my god. Please don't make a season